Sylvia Jess. I was born Sylvia May Katzman, May 21st, 1921, in South Omaha. My parents were Meyer and Nettie Katzman. Mom, maiden name was Gorelick. I was born in a hospital in South Omaha, and we lived there until I was 7 years old, and I went to South Lincoln School when I did. My dad had a garage on 24th Street between F and G, and we lived in a house on between 23rd and 24th and F Street. My dad's parents lived on F Street between 24th and 25th Street. I don't remember very much about my early childhood, except the only time my father ever spanked me is when I was a little girl and I crossed the street by myself to go see him at the garage, and he picked me up and took me home and spanked me because I crossed the street by myself. When I was a little over 7 years old, we moved to Omaha to 127 North 33rd Street, a house with 4 bedrooms. My brother was already born. He was 3 years younger than I, and my mom was pregnant with my younger sister, who was 7 years younger than I. And I started to go to Henry Yates School in the 2nd grade at the end of the semester, really. And I did not have a good experience at that time. After Mom came home from the hospital with Charlotte, I remember running through the alley because my aunt and uncle, Ida and Jake Bernstein, lived 2 blocks from us on North 35th, and we used to go to their house through the alley. And I remember coming home from Auntie Ida's house through the alley, and something happened to me. And I spent that summer in bed. I don't know what it was exactly. I don't know if it was something like Huntington's chorea, if it was some nerve damage, something with the nerves. And my mom had a cousin, my cousin, Goldie Gorelick, come and help her, because there she was with this 2-story, 4-bedroom house, 3 children, one really a baby, and a sick child in bed. And so Goldie used to come and help Mom. And the only thing I do remember about the whole experience, other than what I've just said, is if I eat cantaloupe that's a little too ripe, I taste the medicine that I used to have before I ate. So only that. My experience at Henry Yates was good. I was a very good student. I loved to read. I was not able to do gym because of the illness that I had when I was that age, but I belonged to the Glee Club, and I appeared in the Christmas special plays that we had. And the only other thing about grade school I remember, my 8th grade teacher was Mrs. Gano, and she used to have me read out loud to the class because I read, I guess, with expression in my voice, and I read very well. I went to high school in the middle of the year. At that time, if you were of the right age, you could start school like in January, and that's what I did in grade school, so that I graduated in January, and I started high school then. I was at Central High School. The one thing I always remember about my first day at high school is we kept kosher at home, and I had my lunch break was between one class, not between classes. I would go 20 minutes to a class, then have to go to lunch, and then finish the class afterwards. And I remembered what I ordered that day because I kept kosher. I had mashed potatoes and chocolate pudding. After that, I started taking my lunch. I was a really good student. The only B that I ever got was at midterm in Glee Club. Otherwise, I was all A's. I took Latin for 4 years. I took French for 2 years. I took math for 2 years. I've always been sorry that I didn't take more math because I like figures, and I like math very much. I took very little science. That's always been one of my bugaboos. I'm sorry that I didn't take more science, but I wasn't a scientific person. I didn't date in high school. I had a few friends, Shirley Rosenblum, Miriam Fiddler, Alice Posner. I was active enough. I belonged to clubs. I was on the Central High Register. I was the copy reader for the Central High Register. But my social life was not good as far as high school. I was really an introvert anyway. If somebody asked me to do something, I loved to do it. But I never initiated anything on my own. I never called people to say, let's go to the show or something like that. Although my childhood was good enough and used to roller skate, we never had bikes because 33rd Street was a hilly street, and our mother would never let any one of the three of us have a bike. But we would go down to the street behind us, which was flat, to roller skate, or we would go to the apartment. There was an apartment building close to us, and they had garages all together with a flat roof, and we'd go up and roller skate on that flat roof. My father believed in education, although my grandfather said, what are you going to do, send her to college so she learned how to count diapers? But my father didn't follow that at all, and I did go to Nebraska. I pledged SDT at the time. If you were a Jewish girl, that was really your only choice, because otherwise, they didn't have the dorms at that time where you could live in the dorms. And I really loved college. I was very good there too. I enjoyed sorority because there was a companionship, and I really liked that. And I was successful in my college career. My freshman year, I made Alpha Lambda Delta, which was the freshman honorary. And my first year and a half, I was in arts and science, and then I switched to business because I really loved that side of it. I loved statistics, and I loved economics and so on. My junior year was really wonderful. I did a lot of dating, really a lot of dating, and I had a really good time. I became treasurer of the sorority, and at the end of my junior year, I was made a mortar board, which was the honorary for people who had good grades and did a lot of activities on the campus. And when I graduated, I was not only a Phi Beta Kappa because I had all the requirements for arts and science. I was also a Beta Gamma Sigma, which was the honorary for business. So I really had a good college life that made up for what I didn't do in high school. And in my senior year, in October, the synagogue there had a dance for all the Jewish soldiers that were at the fort or camp, I'm not sure what it was, in Lincoln. And that's where I met my husband at that. And all the sorority girls went to the dance. And I met Lou there. He was stationed there probably 6 weeks, and then we corresponded, and he came back to see me, and I went to Chicago to meet him there, and stayed with an aunt and uncle there. And he went to Michigan. He was sent to Michigan from Lincoln, and then to Virginia, and then to England. He was with the 9th Air Force as a supply sergeant, and he was there until, when were we? I never remember if we were married in 1945 or 1946, after the war. And we corresponded back and forth. For a while, his unit thought that he was lost because he would fly over with supplies to France, and it was a while before they got back, and they almost divided all of his possessions because they thought he was lost. He was also helped supply, the troops in Belgium when they went through that terrible time with the Germans. Meanwhile, after I got out of college, I went to work for Independent Metal, which was my uncle's and cousin's company. I worked in the office there, either taking the streetcar down to 11th and Grace, or Jerry Cohn, who didn't live very far and also worked for them. I'd get a ride with him. And I would, for entertainment, I'd go to shows with my friend Rose Goldstein. Not too much, didn't do too much while I was waiting for Lou to come back. And he got back in the fall, I guess 1945. And we were married January 6th, 1946. We lived with my mother and dad for that whole year. We couldn't get an apartment. My dad even gave a refrigerator to somebody who owned apartments near Henry Yates School, but he didn't give us the apartment. And the only other thing was in houses up in the attic, and we didn't like that whole idea, so we lived with my folks for that first year. And Barbara was born January of the next year, and I heard that Ben Caslow's mother was one of the owners of the apartment building, the Radcliffe at 38th and Dodge, and I kept nagging Ben because he was my dad's lawyer to see if his mother could get us in to that apartment building. And finally, after Barbara was born, we did get an apartment there because somebody moved out. And shortly after that, Lou and I moved into the Radcliffe. It's on the second floor, one bedroom with a living room, dining room, and a kitchen. And I had to go down in the basement to use the washer and hang the clothes and hang the diapers. No dryer, just a washing machine. And that was our life there. Lou, who had been a fur salesman in Chicago, was now working with my dad at the furniture. It wasn't called Mastercraft yet. It was called the National Furniture Manufacturing Company. They manufactured upholstered furniture. And he was there in the cutting room, cutting the fabric that went on the sofas and the chairs. And that was our life. We had friends like Shirley and Sam Berman. Shirley had been my friend not in high school, in college. And we started having potluck supper groups. Oh, but meanwhile, I'm backtracking. Barbara was born in January 14th, 1947. 47, is that right?
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct. And then Sandy was born 2 years later. And so we had a crib in our bedroom and a crib in the dining room. And we knew where we could have another crib or something if another child was born. But not long after Sandy was born, we started looking at houses. And my dad went along with us, and we found this house at 53rd and Blondo. And instead of looking at some of those small houses, with maybe a living room and a kitchen and 2 bedrooms, this was quite a substantial house with 4 bedrooms on the second floor and a half bath, two bathrooms on the second floor, a half bath on the first floor, and a really nice basement. And so we moved there in 1950 after, I guess Sandy was about a year and a half old. And we lived there for 14 years. It was a nice neighborhood. The kids went to Harrison, were able to walk to school. Howard was born then in 1951, because he always tells me I was born when you were 30 years old. And Linda was born 2.5 years later. Yeah. And we had an open back porch on the house, and Lou and I made a den out of it, paneled it, stained the paneling, put windows in. We also did a rec room in the basement. We paneled that, and that's where the kids could play. We bought a piano for $25 because Sandy decided she wanted to learn how to play the piano. We had that down in that rec room. But finally, my mom gave my sister and me each a very lovely spinet piano for the main floor. And everybody took piano lessons, but only 2 really stuck with it. My life was just, I had stopped working after I got married. Lou didn't want me to work. And so I was a housewife and a mother at home. I was, what do you call them? The people that do Girl Scouts and Campfire Girls. I was a campfire leader for Barbara and for Sandy. And I remember my 40th birthday, I couldn't get, actual day, I couldn't get anybody else to do it. There was a great big gathering of campfire girls down at the city auditorium, and I had to spend my 40th birthday at the auditorium with all these campfire girls and all the other campfire leaders. I did that for 4 years. Not too much else. I think maybe then, yes, I also played Mahjong. I played in a group with Shirley Berman. I don't recall who else played. And that was the time when we had the potluck supper group. There were 6 couples of us. There was one group that was that disbanded, and then Shirley put together another group that I really remember. The Bermans, Ralph and Butz Nog, Ben and Charlotte Slutsky, Babe and Harold Perlman, and Sylvia and Al Schwartz. And the men would play poker and the women would play Mahjong. Either Mahjong or bridge, I'm not sure which one. But we always loved it because we always heard laughter coming up from the rec rooms where the men were playing poker. They never played for very high stakes. It was just very entertaining and a lot of fun. And as far as what we did, the hostess would make the main dish and everybody would bring something else to supplement it. By that time, it was shortly after Sandy was born. My dad left the furniture company, which by that time was called Mastercraft. He had also established a factory to manufacture mattresses. And he bought the Commodore Hotel, which was at 24th and Dodge, and Lou became the manager of the hotel. And meanwhile, Dad and Dan went ahead and established a company building mobile homes. And I still was at home. I took my kids to piano lessons Saturday morning, and then they would go to Elfie Hausman to take ballet. And I remember Rabbi Kripke was very unhappy with me because by that time the girls especially were in Hebrew school and he wanted them to come to services Saturday morning, and I felt that this was the only time that I could do this with them, to have something else besides Hebrew school. Because Hebrew school at that time, you either went from 4 to 5:30 or 5:30 to 7. And my kids were split up. And so I used to have to prepare something on Tuesday and Thursday so that they could eat it either before they went to Hebrew school or when they came home from Hebrew school. We did not eat dinners together on those 2 nights. On Sunday, a lot of times we would go down, we had a station wagon, and in those days you didn't have to worry about seat belts. We would pack our 4 kids in there, and my sister and brother-in-law and their 3 kids, and we'd go down to King Fong's. Everybody got to order what they wanted. 2 of the kids did not like Chinese. They either ordered shrimp or hamburgers, but both of them finally turned to so that they did like the Chinese. And after we would go to King Fong's, we'd go to Schulze's, which was down the street at 16th and Farnham, and everybody could get whatever he or she wanted as far as dessert, whether it was licorice or fudge or popcorn or a popcorn ball or whatever. The other place we used to go to was on Saddle Creek for hot dogs, footlongs. So that was our life pretty much. Every other summer we would take the kids and go to Chicago because that's where Lou was from, and his whole family was there. He had one unmarried sister who used to come visit us, but the others didn't. So we would go there. So we never really did a lot with the kids. When Linda was 5, we did go as a family to Estes Park, and I think we were gone a couple of weeks then. Howard did go to JCC camp, but in 1964, which was 18 and a half years after we were married, Lou died. He had been diagnosed the year before with melanoma, and they put him on some antitoxin, and it delayed it for 9 weeks. We came back home in early June. He went to the Methodist Hospital, where he stayed the rest of the time, except maybe a couple of weekends, because the doctor had him doing physical therapy, and no physical therapy, of course, on the weekend. And so we brought him home a couple of weekends like that. I remember one Sunday we brought in Chinese from probably King Fong's, and Charlotte and Morley and the kids came over, and Howard's good friend Jimmy Rice was there, and we were all up in our bedroom eating King Fong's Chinese food. Lou died August 3rd, 1964. Linda had a surprise birthday party for her 10th birthday, which she was not happy about. She wasn't a happy time, of course. Barbara was gone that summer. She was going to be a senior in high school, and she went to Northwestern on one of those journalism periods where you could go during the summer. And I swear that Lou waited until she came back on a Sunday, and one of the things he asked her if she had a good time and if she had enough money, and he died the next day. I think he waited for her. And I know it was a hard time for my kids. It was a very hard time. I'm not sure if I was helpful in helping them. I don't know if I helped them as much as they needed. I guess I needed help myself. And after, a couple of months after he died, I went to work at the Commodore, the mobile home company, in the office. And after the Commodore Hotel refurbished its dining room, I would go there at noon and be a hostess. And also I did some work in the hotel on the books. And but a couple of years later, we sold the hotel, and so I just worked at Commodore. In 1971, my sister-in-law Ruth had the idea of establishing a gift shop with items from Israel. The only thing that this country knew at that time, after the three wars that Israel was in, the 48, the 56, the 67, all they saw was a soldier holding a gun up in the air. And there were many, many very talented people in Israel. And we sold only Israeli merchandise. It couldn't be that green stuff that you always used to see on the menorahs and the mezuzot and so on. But we sold clothing, very lovely giftware, and sterling silver and gold jewelry. Charlotte and Morley and Ruth made the first trip there on the buying trip in 1971, and we opened in November of that year in a very lovely facility at the Indian Hills Plaza at 89th and Dodge. Gary Goldstein was the architect for us, and it was really a beautiful shop. Really, really beautiful. And the three of us worked there. I was still working at Commodore in the morning, and I'd go to Gila, which means joy in Hebrew. I'd go to Gila in the afternoon. Charlotte would work in the morning, and Ruth would work in the afternoon. And we also had friends of ours who would give us a day or two working with us. And Ruth and Dan moved from Omaha in 1976, and so Charlotte and I kept going with it for 10 more years. And it was a good time, except it wasn't as successful as we would have liked it to have been. And I'm very grateful that I'm not in any retail business right now. I think it would be very difficult to be a retailer with all the box stores and all the discount stores. No, it would be very difficult. We closed in 1986, and that was that. After that, I started doing a lot of volunteer work. My dad died in 1981, and so Mom was alone until she died in 89 in her own house. And after we closed the shop, Charlotte and I spent every afternoon with her, because the same reason. She was 91 when she died, and all of her contemporaries were gone. She was the survivor. For a long time after Dad died, and Mom never drove, she would walk over to Western and take the bus, and sometimes come visit us, sometimes go to Crossroads by herself. But at the end, she was really at home and depended upon Charlotte and me. I called her every morning to make sure that she got up, and of course would see her in the morning. In fact, long before Dad died, I used to take the dog, Chris, over to them and leave the dog with them, and then pick the dog up on the way home from the Gila. And in fact, when Dad died, Chris went into the bedroom and lay down on the floor next to where Dad's bed was because he missed him. I did a lot of volunteer work after we closed the shop. I have this firm belief that everybody in this world who could read, we would never have all the terrible crimes and people doing the things they do if people could read. So I started working with the Lawbuck Literacy Council, trying to teach somebody or help somebody learn to read. But I found that not as satisfying, because when you get an adult who's gone through grade school and high school and still can't read, you need somebody who's really been educated to help that person. And I couldn't always help them do that. I did go into the schools. I went to the alternative school, which was at Jackson, and with a wonderful teacher there. And I would sit with kids, take them up to the library, and we would read together. But when that teacher left and she was replaced, the other teacher was not as cooperative. And the last time, and they had moved from Jackson School to Henry Yates School. And the last time I did that, the last day, she said, "Anybody want to go with Mrs. Jess?" Nobody wanted to go with me. I had made the effort to go down, and I was climbing up those steps to the library, and already my knees were not feeling so great. And I thought, why am I doing this? I mean, she's not helping me to help kids read. So I gave that up. But after Mom died, and she was on hospice only for 3 days, but we found that the social workers and the nurses were so wonderful, so great. Charlotte and I decided we'd like to be volunteers for hospice. And even though they didn't take you till a year afterwards, they let us do it right after Mom died, because they saw we were not grieving. We missed our mother, but we were not mourning her, because we knew she had a good life. You know, nobody should expect to live more than 90 years or 91 years. And so they let us volunteer that fall. And I did that for 14 and a half years. The first few years, I did go into the houses to relieve a caretaker, so he or she could go to the store or go to an appointment, and I would stay with the patient. But after that time, they had us making phone calls to the families of patients after a death, because of the V&A regulations made them keep in touch with the family for a year afterwards. So Charlotte and I became the bereavement team. We would go in to the office, take the book, and call people. And even if no one was home, if we'd leave a message on the answering machine, the social workers and nurses told us that people were very receptive to that. If they were already back at work, and most of them were back at work, when you come home and somebody calls to say, "Hi, how are you? Just checking in on you, hoping everything's all right," people really appreciated that call. We did that. Charlotte did it just a little longer than I. There was one day, as I said, after 14 and a half years, I sat there and I heard my voice saying these same things over and over again, and I thought, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this. And that was the last of that. The other volunteer thing that I did. Because of Esther Simon, I knew about Radio Talking Books, which is also an organization that gets no money from United Way, so they have to raise all their own money. And they distribute radios to people with eyesight problems who can't read. And the radios are distributed free of charge. And volunteers go in and make tapes. The only thing that's done live, somebody reads the newspaper for 2 hours twice a day. That's done live. Everything else is done on tape. Things I used to read sports. I would read the Wall Street Journal. I'd read other things, but at the end, they needed somebody to read poetry, and I thought that's great because I can get a book and I can read any poetry. If you're reading something from the sports section or the Sports Illustrated, if you wait too long, it's outdated. But poetry is never outdated, and I go to the library and get all kinds of poetry books, and that was not my forte. I was never an English major, and I never understood the poetry I read, but I did it for years. And I was very close to my sister and brother-in-law, even though Charlotte is 7 years younger than I. And I went to New York with them after Lou died several times. Saw lots of wonderful plays, really good, had a very good time. And early on, I'm not trying to, it was 1970. Charlotte and Morley were chairman of philanthropies for 2 years together. And in 1970, Charlotte encouraged me to do a trip to Israel, a women's mission. I had been to Israel in 1969 with them, and that was a lovely trip. We had our own guide, and it was great. We spent some time in London before we went to Israel. That was a good time. And I went on this trip to Israel, a mission, for 2 weeks, and made a very close friend on that trip. We flew to Vienna first, and I'm sitting on the aisle seat, and at the time you could smoke in the plane. And Evie was sitting in the middle seat, and she said, I won't be able to do this whole trip. And I said to her, I'll change seats with you. I gave her my aisle seat, and I took the middle seat. And I don't know, she must have thought it was a very stupid woman. Her name was Evie Rosenstein. She was from South Bend, Indiana. I knew nobody on that trip. I knew the name of one person that Charlotte had given me, who was from South Bend. But the thing was, after that, and we each had our own room. Nobody had to share a room on this trip. But Evie and I shared adjoining rooms, and then we had all our meals together. We were just together for 2 weeks, and I made a new friend. I still talk to her frequently. We used to see each other once a year, but of course now I'm not traveling, and though she is still traveling, she's going to be 90 in July. and she still goes to Pittsburgh because she has kids there. I don't think she's going to come visit me here, so our friendship has to continue on the phone. And then after Dad died, it was after Dad died in '81, and Mom was home the first year, and the second year, her sister with whom she was very close, Ida Bernstein, died. And Morley said, we have to get Mom out of here this winter. So she went down to be with with Ruth and Dan in Sarasota. And the next year, his father was in Palm Springs, and Morley said to Isaac, why don't you get us an apartment? And he did, and Charlotte and I took turns going with Mom. She went 2 weeks and stayed with Mom, came back, and I went 2 weeks because we had the shop. We had to be concerned about the shop. And when Mom died, and then we started doing that. And then we extended the stays in Palm Springs to 2 months. And we would alternate until the last time when we didn't worry about the shop. We just went. Somebody else took care of the shop. Some of the people who worked for us. By that time we had closed the shop. We didn't have to think about it. And then after Mom died, we wondered, okay, can we still go away? Well, we were old enough still. And I went with Charlotte and Morley, and we'd go for 2 months and rent a house. And it was very, very nice. It was, somebody said, what did you do all day? Morley would play golf sometimes. Charlotte and I played no golf, played no tennis. We didn't gamble, anything like that. We played a lot of Scrabble. We played 3 Scrabble games a day, and that takes a lot of time. And Morley made the most 7-letter words of anybody I ever knew who makes 7-letter words. And he won. At the end of the time we were there, he had won most of the games. He was very, very good at that. And then 8 years, this is 16. And in 2008, my knees were getting worse, and somehow, because I don't want to be a hypochondriac, I don't go to the doctor very often. I should have gone to the doctor. I should have had my knees taken care of, and I didn't. And by that winter, I got a walker. Morley took me someplace there to get a walker. And I found that I was not wanting to go all the time, and sometimes they would want to go someplace, and I say, I think you can leave me here. And at the end of that season, I said to them, I'm not coming back. I didn't want them to have to worry about me. I didn't want them to have to take care of me. And when I got back to Omaha, we would be gone the month of January and February, and I thought, okay, they're going back. No one's going to be around. I maybe should not stay in my house. And I told my kids, I think it's time for me to move. And Sandy was visiting me, and we went to see Remington. That was the only place I wanted to look at. I liked the location, and I knew that there were a lot of Jews there, and that was important to me. And we went and looked and put down a deposit. I didn't even take my checkbook with me. Sandy had to write a check for me for a deposit. they had no rooms. I wanted a 2-bedroom apartment because I was afraid if I was just in 2 rooms after coming from a 2,800 square foot house, I would get claustrophobia. And I really did like having that extra room, even though I didn't have a couch in there. And when Barbara came to visit me, she slept on the couch in my living room. I didn't have a hide-a-bed. I didn't have anything like that. And they finally had one for me in June, and I moved in to Remington in June of 2008. Meanwhile, trying to get my house sold, and don't you know, I picked a terrible year. That's when everything fell apart with the banks and the mortgages. Everything went to pot. I don't know. Tony Rosen was the real estate agent for me, and I don't know how many places, how many times she showed my house. One time somebody was interested in it. It was after we had had a terrible, terrible, terrible windstorm in June, and part of the tree in the backyard broke through the soffit in my roof. And this man came to look at the house, and I've got water in the basement. Now, I don't know how I had water when I had 3 sump pumps 2 sump pumps in the basement and 1 in the garage. I found out afterwards when they were fixing the roof that there was a dead squirrel in the downspout, and that's what made the water back up and go into the basement. There wasn't that much, but there was enough to deter him. There was finally one person who gave me an offer, and even though it was not what I wanted, I wasn't trying to make money. I just put the price on it, the valuation, the property taxes I was paying on it. Just if they were valuing my house at that, that's what I thought I should get. Well, I didn't get that. And then on top of that was an inspection. They said I needed a new roof, and so they lowered how much they wanted to give me. Anyway, I decided nuts to that. I'd rather have the money. I don't want to have to worry about it. I don't want to have to worry about mowing the lawn, paying for that, paying insurance, paying the utilities, having the snow plowed, and trying to wait to get a better price. And I sold it to the one person that offered me anything. And I moved into Remington, into the independent living side, and I really was happy there. I took advantage of lots of the activities. I would always go when Temple had Shabbat Comes to You on Fridays. I never went down for breakfast. I felt I was not going to get dressed, not going to hurry to go for breakfast, but I did, go for lunch and dinner. And I did, at the beginning, I played bridge with Reba Cooklin and Charlotte Coombe, Dorothy Kotak, Abe Schloff. We did play bridge, but when they disappeared, I didn't play anymore until Betty Sanford moved in to the assisted living side, and she got together a game. And so I played with Betty and with Blanche Wise, with Esther Meaches there. It was okay. And I started 2 groups. Early on, when I was still living in my house, and I was doing needlepoint, I always admired when I went into needlepoint studios, people would be sitting around the table needle pointing and conversing, and I thought it would be nice to have a sewing group of some kind. And so that I didn't hurt anybody's feelings, I decided I would just have them, the ladies that ever had worked at Gila. There had been 12 of us at one time working at, only a couple of days a week or one day a week. And so I started this sewing group just to sit around the table. And at the time I said, just a cup of coffee and a cookie. And if you're doing any needlepoint, if you're embroidering, if you're sewing on a button, if you're knitting. And so we started a lunch group, once a month. And it is still going. There are only 5 of us yet, and nobody sews. And now, because I'm here, we meet on every 3rd Friday of the month for the Star Deli. At first, we went from just the cookie and the coffee to Eunice saying, well, how about some lunch? We're meeting at lunchtime. And everybody would do lunch. And then when I moved here, they started bringing lunch in. And somebody suggested, why don't we do the Star Deli? And everybody picked up on that, because you can get up and leave the dishes on the table. You don't have to prepare anything, and it's working very well. And of course, we've had many deaths. We've lost a lot of our friends that way, but as I said, there are still 5 of us doing it. 5? 2? Yeah, just 5. Just 5. And I still meet, as I told you, with my alum group. And we're still 4 meeting, maybe 5 at times, meeting also once a month for lunch. We, after our 50th reunion, and then we had one 55th, we would meet once a year for dinner, and then maybe twice a year. And then it started to be lunch. And so that's what's happened. So I have, what's my 3rd lunch group? I have a 3rd lunch group. Anyway, that's the extent of my social life now. And last summer, in 2015, April, I had bronchitis. I was coughing like mad. I was in the hospital for a week and came here for rehab for several weeks. And then when I went back to Remington, the doctor and my family decided I should be in assisted living, not just independent living. So we moved my apartment from the 3-room on the 3rd floor to a 2-room apartment on the 2nd floor. And I was there 3 weeks, and Barbara was here from California. It was Mother's Day. No, it was later than Mother's Day. No, excuse me, go back. It was Mother's Day. And something happened to me. I was very, very, very nauseated, and I couldn't go out for dinner on Sunday for Mother's Day. And Monday I didn't want to get out of bed. I don't remember anything about Monday except Barbara found me on the floor near the bed, and rescue squad took me to the hospital, and after many, many, many tests, I'm not sure what was wrong with me. I'm not sure they know what was wrong with me. After 8 days in the hospital, they brought me here to Blumkin Home, and I was on hospice And after a few weeks, I said, I don't think I'm actively dying. I didn't feel like I was dying. I didn't feel like eating, but I didn't feel like I was dying. And so after the 4 weeks, I was off of hospice, and that's when I started moving around a little bit. I started getting myself dressed by myself, getting back and forth into the chair by myself, and doing almost everything except something happened with my legs. I couldn't walk. And at the end of September, when I had cortisone injections in my knees, and that didn't help me, they graduated me from physical therapy. I was on my own then. They knew I wasn't going to get out of the wheelchair. I do, in my room, I do walk with the walker a lot of times. I make myself do that. But rolling down in the building, I roll in the wheelchair. And even though I'm not sure I belong at the Blumkin home, I know it's comforting for my kids to know I'm taken care of, or there's somebody here who will take care of me if I need it. They know I'm doing a lot on my own. They know I don't take advantage of half of the things that I can, for nursing care. I'm not really getting, outside of their giving me pills and taking my blood pressure every morning. I really am a Miss Pollyanna, an optimistic person. And I have always said that it's so much easier to have your mouth turn up than to have it turn down. And it's so much pleasanter to look at somebody who is smiling rather than always look like she's frowning. I think my kids know how I feel about them. I do not say goodbye to them without saying I love you. Even with Linda, when I text her every day, it's easier than trying to call her. Because one day I said to her when I was living in the house, honey, I'd like you to call me in the morning to make sure I haven't fallen down the basement steps. And because she's at work, it's kind of hard for a conversation, so we do texting. But I wouldn't say a text without saying I love you. They're very dear to my heart. I think I've raised very good citizens. They're very responsible people. The thing that I worked on mostly after their dad died was to give them as much self-independence as possible in case anything happened to me. I didn't coddle them necessarily. I wanted them to be strong and independent, and I'm hoping that that's what they'll be when I'm gone. They're really, really good, understanding people, really good people, and very loving. And that's my legacy, those 4 kids and the grandchildren.